Hi, good afternoon. I was going to start my talk today by talking about why innovate, but we've had such a great day of inspiring talks that I'm not going to do that. I think all of the other speakers have answered that question for us. So I'm just going to say that there are a lot of different ways to define innovation, and I will call it creativity that enables business outcomes. And I will talk specifically about how to enable and foster innovation at enterprise scale, not just in your innovation lab, but across the enterprise. I've spent my career working for consultancies, and so I've had the opportunity to work with a lot of different organizations through that, from startups to SMBs to large enterprises. And this has really been a privilege because I've gotten an insight into what makes these organizations great and also into what are some of the unique challenges that these companies are facing. And I've gotten to see their approach to innovation, how they enable and foster it, and what works and what doesn't. When we look around us today, where do we see a lot of the innovation? It's in the startup world. We see all of these disruptors, challenger banks that we talked about earlier today, and it's clear that there's something about startup environments that makes it easy to innovate, that is highly conducive to creativity and to experimentation. Now, I don't think that there is one formula for innovation. I think every successful innovator has their own special sauce. But I do think that there are a few common threads that make it easier for startups to do this. Personal accountability is innate in a startup. When you have a company of 5 or 10 people, it's very easy for each person to feel invested in the success of your business, and by extension, the outcomes of their work. And this accountability enables autonomy, and so people are empowered to step up, to take initiative, and to create the outcomes. And they do this in a way that is highly collaborative because these are tightly knit environments, and so the collaboration comes somewhat naturally. And both of these things are further empowered by mission alignment. In startups, everybody knows what your business vision is, what the strategy is to get there, and what the constraints around them are. And when you take these ingredients and put them together, it creates a powerful formula for innovation. But can we do this at enterprise scale? When you go from 100 to 1,000 to 100,000 people, these enablers no longer appear organically. Communication needs to be a lot more deliberate. Accountability tends to live in accountability structures. It's not innate anymore. And your collaboration is facilitated through process. But that doesn't mean we can't be innovative at enterprise scale. We look at companies like Google and Spotify, and they are seen as the embodiment of these values. It just means that we have to be very deliberate about creating the right environment for innovation. Microsoft is a really interesting example of this. They were founded as a tech startup, and for a long time were seen as the poster child for innovation. And then over time, sort of as the poster child for bureaucracy. And if that can happen to a tech giant, it could happen to any of us. But I think the real insight for me in Microsoft's rise and atrophy and rebirth is that innovation can stagnate, but innovation can also be enabled. When we work in enterprise environments, it's not just about innovation. It's also about consistency, especially in financial environments where you have to consider regulatory requirements and risk and legal and compliance. We have to think about how can we be efficient and how can we create repeatable outcomes. So what we tend to do is identify which activities require innovation and which require consistency. And then we organize these teams differently. We give them different levels of autonomy, different accountability structures, different incentives. And in doing so, in creating a false distinction between innovation and consistency, we create an innovation silo. An innovation silo is when all the innovation in your organization lives exclusively in your innovation lab or your incubator or your digital factory. You have these teams working on exciting new ideas, but sometimes they're disconnected from the day-to-day reality of your business. And you have your core teams working towards the bottom line, but sometimes without the opportunity to really experiment and innovate. And this is dangerous. Over time, both teams become disempowered. Your innovation teams become disempowered because they're coming up with great new ideas, but they can't get a product to market. And your core teams become disempowered because they have products in market, but they can't innovate and experiment on them. And when it comes time for budget cuts, innovation labs are often the first to go. And that's dangerous if all your creativity and all your R&D budget lived in the innovation lab. Now, I'm not here to tell you that innovation labs don't work. I think that there's a use case for them. I've seen them work successfully at organizations, but I think that we can make them a lot more powerful and a lot more sustainable. And we do so by making the walls of these silos a lot more porous. What we need is to create a holistic culture of innovation. Now, creating a cultural shift of this magnitude isn't easy, but I think with a few changes to the way your teams are structured, your mindset, your team's mindset, we can go a long way. So I'm going to share 3 insights that I have seen work for me to do this. Collaboration, especially cross-departmental collaboration, is key to an integrated culture of innovation. We need our teams to be organized cross-functionally at the business unit level. What we see often is we have a product idea that's related to a business goal, and it comes from the business or the product team, and then it goes to your IT team to be implemented, and then it goes through engineering and QA and legal, and by the time you have a product, it doesn't really talk to that business goal anymore, and the vision is completely diluted. What we need instead is teams that are organized cross-functionally, empowered by a business mandate. These teams need to have autonomy, and they need to be empowered to create the outcomes that we're asking of them. And if this sounds risky, it is a little bit risky, but we can mitigate that by good information flow and context sharing. Context is a really powerful and undervalued tool. By taking the time to share with your teams your vision and strategy, as well as the constraints around them, you can really empower them. Ask yourselves, do your teams understand your decision-making strategy? If you weren't there, would they make the same decision that you want them to make? And if the answer is no, then that's something to reflect on. Often it indicates missing context. Continuous improvement is essential for innovation. Innovation goes hand in hand with failure. When you're trying new things, you're experimenting, you're pushing the envelope, sometimes that won't work. And when it doesn't, we need to be able to talk about that. We need to create a culture where it's okay to fail, where it's okay to talk about failure and learn from it, where we can own it. And to do that, we need psychological safety. Now, when we think about lean methodologies or agile, we think about getting products to market quickly. But continuous improvement is actually one of the core pillars of these methodologies. When Toyota first introduced lean manufacturing, they installed a physical cord in the factory floor called an and-on cord. The purpose of this cord was that any worker on the factory who saw an issue with process or quality or just a way to be better could pull the cord. When the cord was pulled, all operation was stopped, and everyone got together to discuss the concern and to find a way to move forward. When they did, they resumed operations. To me, this and-on cord is a physical manifestation of psychological safety. So we need to think about this. Do our teams have this kind of psychological safety? If they see an issue, can they pull the and-on cord? A framing I often use with my team is, it's not your fault, but it is your problem. I don't care how it went wrong, but I do want to understand how we can stop that from happening again. And I do want us to recognize that we are still accountable for the outcomes. And the third one is accounting for success. We're all familiar with the use it or lose it of corporate budgets, We've lived it, we're living it right now, trying to get through our budget for the year. And when we incentivize our team's spend in this way, we don't incentivize the right behaviors. We don't incentivize product success or traction or waste reduction. We just incentivize spending. As leaders, it's important that we be very deliberate about choosing the right metrics for success. We often see startups biased entirely towards traction and early stage metrics for too long in the product cycle. In enterprises, we see an interesting dichotomy where your core teams are incentivized entirely by bottom line, by ROI, and your innovation teams are working on a project that has no clear definition of success, or if it does, it's not tied to your business strategy. What we need is to find the right combination of metrics for what success looks like for your business goal at this time. It's usually a combination that incentivizes ROI and incentivizes traction while still enabling creativity and experimentation. Innovation can mean transformation. It can mean disruption. But it can also just mean finding a creative way to be better tomorrow than we are today. And I argue that that kind of innovation needs to live at every level of the organization, in every team and in every employee. When we achieve that, we can make our innovation labs more powerful, our core teams more powerful, and create better business results every day. Thank you for your time. And you can download our talks here. Thank you.